I don't know if the camera caught that, but it says, never be the one who says, I have no idea.
Absolutely. That's the motto.
All right. So if this was through the genie in the bottle and you rubbed it and you got 3 wishes, right? You got 3 wishes where if you could have any pieces of data that you don't currently have to track the market, what would they be and how would you use them?
Oh, if I had 3 pieces of data, number one, I would love to see the internal data lines of big corporations on when are they letting certain people go, especially now that the non-competing clauses are going to be out. I think it's going to be much more interesting with companies now on who they keep and who they don't. And for me, it's just so much of the Federal Reserve being not a Fed pivot person. They want to see the kind of the labor market break. And that is something to me that is early on that you don't see in the quick jobless claims data. It would be kind of ahead of the curve. Probably impossible to get, but
yeah, I would think so. That'd be some insider information there.
Yes, absolutely.
But then if you had that data, well, how would you go?
For me, it's always trying to time the economic cycle, and there's certain models that we use in economics going back decades, and one of the things that I've always said that residential construction workers tend to lose their jobs first before the recession starts. That's one of the things that hasn't happened yet that people weren't aware of. Like that's really a big deal. So to me, it's actually more housing related. I would love to see, like, when do the construction builders actually start to say, okay, in 2 months from now, this would actually, we'd have to lay off X amount of people.
Interesting. What else you got? What's
number 2 would actually be how many people are actually on severance? Because, for example, a lot of people see these tech layoffs and they don't see the jobless claims rising. And I would say, well, some of these people have 6 to 12 months of severance, and they don't need to file for unemployment claims. And I think the third one that would go with that is, what is the compensation basis of these severance packages? And when, if I could get all that data, I could time the economic cycle a little bit earlier than other people, but we don't have that data. It doesn't really exist. But those are the things, because for me, I'm a macroeconomic cycle person first, housing second. So those are the things, especially now more than ever with the Federal Reserve and what's going on in the economy. Those would be very, very early indicators.
And so as those early indicators, when it applies to housing, and look at the market we're in now.
Yeah, to me, it's always been the same thing since the end of 2022. The Federal Reserve wants to see the labor market break, right? The growth rate of inflation has made great progress for some time now, but they haven't pivoted yet. So in this case, the labor market breaking, or as I said, when jobless claims start to rise, then the bond market gets ahead of the Fed, mortgage rates start to go down, and then the Fed goes, oh my God, I didn't see this coming. And at that point, and housing gets disproportionately benefited. Just like here, the last 2 years, the economy was fine, but housing disproportionately got hit harder because financial conditions are tighter, especially for housing, as the spreads are worse. So in this case, I always tell people that, when I went to COVID-19 recovery model in April 7th, and people told me, Logan, there's 20 to 30 million people unemployed. There's 5 million in forbearance. Why do you think anybody would buy homes? I go, that's cute. We've got 133 million people still working with 3% rates. So when the next recession happens, I think what's going to occur is people are going to think, who's going to buy a home in this? We're going to have more people working than any other time in U.S. history, with the best housing demographics ever, with pent-up demand being held up because home sales are trending at the lowest levels ever now for year 3. And that will override the initial job loss recession data, as mortgage rates will fall down and housing gets disproportionately hit to the positive side.
Yeah. So with all this, we've got the topics with the real estate community. We've got topics on the mortgage and finance community here at the gathering. What recommendations do you give to this community where, you take very complex problems and break them down so folks like us can actually understand what's happening in the market?
Yeah.
How could you apply that to give us an idea of how we could do that in our business?
Well, to me, it's like the last 2 years, a lot of people, because the forecasts were probably a little bit more bullish on mortgage rates falling, I've kind of just said, you know what, let's not put all the eggs on this basket, and let's put some of the eggs on other baskets. So anybody running a company in this sense can focus their business not on one thing happening a certain way, kind of have multiple different models just in case if your prime egg didn't, land the spot. And in this case, for me, it's always been the labor market needing to get softer to get sustainable lower mortgage rates where the Fed starts to pivot and talk about neutral policies. And, in the presentation I did is trying to show people these are the things that really matter. So don't focus your whole business model on this happening because this happened and it didn't, so you got to get cut or caught in a situation where you weren't prepared. Always make sure to be prepared if plan A or B doesn't work out, and be nimble out there and get yourself in a position where you can handle it better.
Yeah. No, so, I was sitting in the session a little earlier with Kevin Sears, and he was talking about, his background in sports and really applying those types of leadership models to this present situation, right, in terms of where he sits. I understand from you, basketball coaching career, right? Like, how do you apply that to what you do on this type of stage?
So for me, it's always two things on that side. Number one, I grew up an athlete, captain of the basketball team, high school basketball coach. To coach, to teach, if I do my jobs right, you understand this, you could finish my sentences, What you don't want to do is talk about something, okay, somebody sees it, doesn't really understand it, but it kind of looks good. If I do my job, everyone can finish my sentences for me because economics are models and variables and things, and that's the coaching side of actually wanting to teach, just like how you get a group of kids and you teach them team defense and team offense. The fundamentals are more important than drawing up a fancy play. But also being an athlete is you want to win. And that's how I would say, like, I wake up every single day thinking that I have to be the best of my, because I want to win. I don't want to kind of be a doomsday person and get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Like I was not raised that way. I was raised in, we want to win, and being right matters more than saying the craziest things online just to get the most attention. I think that's an advantage I have growing up as an athlete or growing up as a high school basketball, because we want to teach economics, but you also have your own pride that you want to be right.
Yeah. All right, so you want to win. Yes. And we all talk about first-time home buyers and how challenging it is for them. What advice do you have for a first-time home buyer in this market if they want to win, right? I mean, how often do we hear it takes some X amount of offers in order to be able to get something accepted?
It's I'm sure it's very terribly frustrating. It's one of the things that, was like in the back of my mind, for years 2020 to 2024, what if inventory broke to all-time lows when the biggest housing demographic patch hits? Because inventory is slowly going lower, but we were still okay, and then 2020 came, and all hell broke loose. But for me, it's like, just like in athletics, and just like in doing economic models, you have to be persistent, but you have to be ready. And you have to be ready with all the variables that you have in your market. And if there is a total payment that you are fine with, because that's what you're sleeping with every night and waking up every morning, that fixed debt costs, okay? You do not have the luxury of waiting, and if there's a market where you do have some luxury to wait a little bit, you kind of want to jump on something like that, because every day that goes by, we get closer to death. That's kind of how I look at it. And if some people are trying to time a market, I would say housing is the cost of shelter to your own capacity to own a debt. Don't think of it as an investment. Millions of people buy homes every single year. They bought in 2008. They bought in 2020. We had near 5 million home sales last year. And millennials are now back on top. The baby boomers took the title from them just for the 18 months. But now, if you see something, prepare yourself. Always get yourself the updated information of your mortgage payment, because that's key. And get yourself the pre-qualification loan. Always get set with that and update it every week and update it every month. But when that time comes, you jump on it. It's like that game in the 1980s, Hungry, Hungry Hippos, right? There's just a few balls out there. You got to come up there and get it, snatch it away. Because all those people behind you, they're not going to wait for you. You have to make your own decision. So you want to be up to date with all the information you can possibly have, with all the variables to make that choice, because It's your home. It's a cost of shelter to live in.
Yeah. And so, with all the uncertainty in the market right now around, commissions and how agents are going to be paid, especially a lot of questions around the buyer side, whether it's going to stay the same, whether things are going to change. What recommendation would you give to the agents that are representing buyers that are trying to help them?
You have to do your job in terms of versing your buyers more now than ever. Because to me, when I look at the lawsuit, I always think of the economic implications first. And to me, what has happened for decades, trillions of dollars have been created in housing. That trillions of dollars has also been kind of a stimulus program for buyers because the seller, for the most part, paid the buyer's commission, and that means less money that the buyer has to come in. Now you're going to have to discuss with your buyers the possibility of this might not happen. This might happen here. These three homes are similar to each other, but this one is offering 1% commission, so less money coming out of your pocket. And I think the more information like that, the more discussion gives the buyer a little bit more confidence of where they're going to, because I read a story in the New York Times, buyer goes in last, final day, and they're like, wait, I have to bring more money? Because, because that was not. So you have to do an exceptional job of training your buyer and teaching them the pros and cons of this lawsuit, and working with that with every single home that they look and run the numbers day and out and give them that information all the time.
Yeah, that's great. What we found, what we're doing with Final Offer, it's been really interesting to see the agents that have been helping buyers through the process where when sellers are actually putting the price and terms out into the market that they'll actually take, and sometimes you can actually see where offers stand, they've actually been able to coach their buyers in the moment to say, you know what? You can make an offer for this or you can make an offer for that, but this is how it actually impacts your monthly payment.
Yeah.
And how long are you going to stay here?
Yeah.
And let's make a decision with that type of data versus just trying to shoot in the dark.
Absolutely.
And it's been incredible to see.
You cannot shoot in the dark anymore. Everyone needs to live in I'm a nerd, so I love this. We need to live in a world of numbers, right? And those numbers do not stay static. They move daily. So you have to be able to want to put the time to let the buyers know. And I would say majority of sellers are buyers as well. So when they sell, they're going to be on the other side of the equation too. So it has to be a whole process where everyone gets trained and everybody's up to date with the numbers and how the transaction goes. So nobody gets surprised, but you go into the whole process knowing everything ahead of yourself and getting that magical number in there that makes sense for everyone.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up like this. We've been hearing a lot about transparency over the last year, and we've been hearing a lot of folks saying, show your value. What does that mean to you?
To me, for me, as an economic term, my job is to basically every single day keep people as informed as always on what's going on in the economy and give people historical models on what happened so people have a little bit of confidence in the data. Like I've always learned, every city I tour into, I have one chart that I love more that's going on my tombstone. I always say to people, if anybody says it's housing 2008, my value is to show you all it isn't. And I show you what happened in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Then the job loss recession happened. None of that action has been happening for 14 years. My value is to tell you the truth. And I think in the real estate industry, that's it. Your value is to tell people the truth and give them the numbers, kind of like how us nerds operate. And then it's more transparent to the entire cost of the transaction. No matter what the final offer will be, you have the information at hand. Your seller, your buyer, everybody is dealing with the reality of the new numbers out there.
That's right, right. And the ability to have more transparency to bring trust to the market and elevate it. That's what we're seeing.
More trust means easier acquisitions, easier buying, easier selling. Everybody knows.
That's right. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah.